The Shark Deck.
I'm Johnny Mac with your daily comedy news. Hey, Nikki Glaser, what do you do on your day off? She'dSellIthaca.com. I watched The Last of Us with my boyfriend. I go to dinner and I try to spend quality time with my boyfriend, which is new for me because even though we've been together for 10 years off and on, for any comic, I think it's a struggle to have a relationship with someone who's not a comedian because the hours are strange and socializing is such a part of it. And it's a compulsion. And I go to 3 clubs a night and I'm just driving around. It's hard to take someone with you to that because I'm just in and out, just run in, do a set. But there's no part of it that's like, invite friends, let's all hang out. It's like a marathon. It would be like someone coming to watch me work out. I don't want company. I just want to get it done and go home. She says she was obsessed with comedy from the start. This feels so good and it's just so much fun. And I have a whole new batch of friends. And in the beginning, you don't have that many opportunities to go on stage. It's like once a week, there's an open mic, or maybe then it gets to be you find more of them. And then there's 3 or 4 times a week. You're doing 3 minutes on stage. And now I'm doing 15. It's 3 sets a night. So you end up talking for 45 minutes every night. You're running around town. It's a lot more intense. But I always tell comics that are starting out, they're always like, what, how, what should I do? And the advice every comic always gives is get on stage as much as possible. And I always say, if you have to give that advice to someone, they're not cut out for it, because it shouldn't be hard to do this every night. It's the best feeling in the world to get laughs, and it becomes an addictive feeling for sure. It's like the biggest hit of dopamine you could possibly have. I think heroin might trump it. She adds, I liked acting as well, and I still do, but it always feels like there's some part of it where you can go, well, it's not completely me. But comedy is like, you like me. You write it, you perform it. It's a control freak's dream doing stand-up. The New Yorker asked Kate Berlant, did you ever beg your parents to go on any Hollywood auditions? I mean, you were already nearby. And Kate said, what happened was one of my best friends growing up, Sammy Birch, who's a really brilliant screenwriter, had a mother who was a casting director, and her mother's friend was casting Lizzie McGuire. And it's kind of a fun gag. A lot of us girls went into audition. I was 13, and I got it, which truly has never happened again. The only other job I've ever received from a straight audition was for Tarantino. So yeah, I had a leg up at Lizzie McGuire. They asked her, did you go to Crossroads, the private school in Santa Monica where all the celebrity children went? Her answer is interesting. She said, I went to Archer School for Girls. I was supposed to go to Crossroads, and it broke my parents' heart when I decided not to. I think I was really scared about being around boys. They asked her about the bat mitzvah scene in L.A., and she said, I dropped out of Hebrew school because it conflicted with the Steel Magnolias play rehearsal scheduled at school. All right, how'd you get into stand-up? She said, I always had a very romantic obsession with New York City and therefore Woody Allen. Redacted. Now I'm like, was there a world in which 17-year-old me was guffawing at Woody Allen's stand-up? I didn't understand half the references. Then I started to become really into what else was coming out of New York. What was then referred to as the alternative comedy scene. My senior year of high school, the SNL oral history book came out, and I remember clutching it and crying to my English teacher, being like, I have to go to New York. By the way, I love school, and I still do. The Pitch KC caught up with Brian Posehn. Hey, Brian Posehn, when you first started out, it was so rare to see someone exclusively talking about nerd culture and metal culture. After decades of being a comedian, what's left for you to explore? Brian said, I don't know. You hear your crusty old nerds, gatekeepers, complaining about things, but at some point, you just have to let go of a lot of the stuff and not be too attached to it. I mean, I feel like I grew as a person through my connection with Star Wars and eventually just letting it go. Cracks me up as a crusty old dude now to watch other people when they get upset about things, and especially some of the petty things that nerds get mad about, which is kind of surprising because I always felt like as nerds, we should be welcoming to everybody. It wasn't something that I consciously said, hey, I'm going to be the nerd comic. I just started talking about it at different shows. I found myself mentioning that I was mad about Star Wars, and then it connected. That encouraged me to keep doing it, to let people in, about what I cared about. Good question here. Who are some up-and-coming comedians that most people don't know that you, Brian Posehn, are really into? He said, my friend Blair Sochi's hilarious. She's starting to blow up. My guy that I'm bringing with me, Johnny Taylor, he's one of the funniest dudes out there. He's not young. He's quite my age, but he's been doing it a long time and deserves recognition because he's super, super funny. Smart writer that fits really well with my act. It's really important to me that the show's consistent and solid. I don't want to follow somebody weak just so it makes it easy for me. I love following somebody who crushed. I've been sitting on this next item for a bit here, and you'll be able to tell why in a second. But hey, it's the weekend. I do that. I sleep stories. And the question was, hey, Tom Segura, you did Sober October. Check your calendar, Johnny Mac. How'd that go? Segura said, I'm not a big party guy, so it's not like eliminating that stuff is a challenge, really. I would have a casual drink maybe after a show or something that I don't do now, but I enjoy doing it for the month. The fun part of me is I'm doing it with 3 other friends. That's what I would encourage other people to do. Get a group of people together, especially friends, because then there's camaraderie and crap talking, and that's the part that makes it fun. The funny thing is, the first time we ever did it, it was completely just for Bert Kresicher. We were like, we need to do something for this guy. He's like out of control. He drinks too much and parties too hard. And that was the first time. Then this year, that was the motivation again. The rest of us were like, we got to try something. It's crazy because he's literally this anomaly. Most people, once they get in their 30s and 40s, and he'll be 50 soon, they really have to dial back. and like partying and drinking stuff. We were like, oh, we got to do this again. So Bert was really the motivation. Of course, we all go, this is for Bert, but the benefit goes to all of us. I mean, you have Joe Rogan, who's always been in great physical shape, but he even celebrates that it's making him more disciplined, and he's already a disciplined athletic person. Then Ari Shafir does no fitness stuff. He's more into psychedelics and edibles and weed, and he hates that he has to stop for the month. Then me, I've been on a bit of a health kick on this tour, so I've been working out quite a bit. I bring a trainer on the road. I've been eating pretty healthy, but this makes me take it to another level. The truth is, we all get a great benefit from the month, and we get messages from people every day that are like, hey, you guys inspired me, and I'm doing it too.
Welcome to How to Tickle Yourself. I'm your host, Duff McDonald.
And I'm your co-host, Matt McButter. We'll be talking to people who specialize in different ways of inhabiting their own consciousness, from artists to yoga teachers to scientists. We've even got a professional magician.
We're going to ask them questions like, what is consciousness? Why does it tickle? And what is magic anyway? Is it just card tricks, or is it the fact that your little speck of consciousness is part of a perfect possibility machine?
Find us wherever you get your podcasts and at storicmedia.com.
From the Deseret News, the case for clean comedy. They write, for clarity, let's define what clean comedy is and isn't. Before I read ahead, I'll give you my answer, because when I was at SiriusXM, programming the clean comedy channel was always such a challenge because there's not that much material out there to begin with. And one of the big stars of clean comedy was this guy, Bill Cosby. He would be like the artist you would play a lot, and he's not so cool anymore. You know what I mean? Then the other issue is I started out, as I had defined it, match game naughty. You know, so you might make a joke about boobs, say, or a light drug reference, you know, on the sly, something like that would fly over the head of your average 8-year-old. And we'd get the letters. Hey, I thought this was the Clean Family Channel. So we had to keep just reeling and reeling it in. And you'd basically wind up with Jim Gaffigan making Hot Pockets jokes. Deseret News writes, for clarity, let's define what clean comedy is and isn't. Comics who avoid profanity and refrain from overtly sexual and vulgar material or blue comedy are generally labeled as clean, but it's not kid comedy. Leanne Morgan says she works in the PG-13 range. Yeah, that's where I tried to start out as a programmer and couldn't keep it there because of the complaints. She'll talk about menopause, marriage, and underwear, but not in a nasty way. I do use some innuendo, she said, and I talk about real things, but I don't use language and I'm not graphic. Dusty Slay says he tries to do an act that can be enjoyed without anyone being embarrassed, but it's all grounded in adult experiences. He says, I definitely have some PG stuff, I have some G-rated stuff, but if you come see me in the club, I'm for more of a mature audience. I try to find a way to talk about adult experiences that can be relatable without being gross. Why do comics work clean? Nate Bargatze said, just how I grew up. It's basically it. Leanne Morgan said, it's really just who I am. Brian Regan said, I'm just doing what I do. Josh Johnson spoke with Movie Web about cancel culture, and he said, I think while there are definitely bad actors, there are also people who get off on overblowing a situation. Dave Chappelle. I think that being canceled is like a murky and interesting thing, because when you look at people who have been canceled, they're doing great. I think for the most part, when you think about being canceled, stuff like that, I'm not saying it doesn't happen. I'm just saying that people who you really need to worry about when it comes to cancel culture are regular people. Regular people are the people that don't recover, right? Celebrities, especially celebrities we love, always try to find their way back. Remember the dentist who shot Cecil the Lion? Yeah, that guy's probably not doing great. Wonder what happened to that guy. I don't imagine his business is doing better than it was before, so it's like you have to look at it the way things actually end up, despite how we feel about them. Now I'm curious. Let's see what happened to that guy. Oh no! From the New York Post in 2020, Cecil the Lion's killer is back, slaughtering endangered rams in Mongolia. The enormous sheep are considered a national treasure, and only 19,000 left in the world. The Humane Society said for trophy hunters to travel to Mongolia to kill a beautiful and endangered ram is an absolute outrage. From 2022, Cecil the Lion killer dentist inundated with 1-star Yelp reviews, or at least we can find a little humor here. One review, instead of featuring animals in your office decor, you could get some hunting-themed wallpaper and really show them what you're about, stalking and killing animals in their natural habitat. Another review, terrible dentist, do not recommend unless you want bloody gums at the hands of a sociopath. What I love here is most of the people are leaving straight reviews, and it says their locations, so they're from all over the world. But they're like, oh, I happened to be in town and stopped by there because of an emergency, and the dentist was terrible. Moving on. Remember we were talking about Josh Johnson? He was talking about cancel culture before that little sidebar? Yeah, I had forgotten where we were too. Josh said, I really haven't encountered those things, and if I ever encounter them, meaning cancel culture, not hunting exotic animals, then I'll deal with them accordingly when the time comes. But I always try to show people that I have good intentions and it's not really worth trying to head people on. I'm not trying to troll anybody. I'm just trying to make everybody laugh. And I want to share this next story for you. I recorded it earlier today for my podcast, 5 Good News Stories. I'm sure you've heard the promo. That's where I tell you 5 stories, and they're all upbeat. And I had such a good time with this story, I just thought I'd share it. It's not really comedy, but you'll laugh. Here we go. The headline, my colleague charged guests for food at her wedding. I got McDonald's instead. See, a woman went to a wedding and she was kind of annoyed to find out the guests had to pay for their meals, so she left and grabbed McDonald's. Yeah, apparently one bride was trying to offset costs for her wedding and made her guests pay for the food. They were going to have to pay about $50 for a steak. The guest in question explained that the bride was her coworker and she'd been told before the wedding she didn't have to pay anything to attend, but that turned out not to be the case, and she was like, no, I'm not having any of this, and went over to McDonald's. She asked the bride if it was cool if, mind if I step out and grab some Mickey D's. The bride was fuming at that suggestion and even branded her colleague cheap for refusing to eat at the wedding. So how do we sort this out as friends? We take this to Reddit, of course. And the McDonald's fan said, recently my colleague invited me to her wedding, which happened yesterday. I was super excited and happy for her. Just in case, I asked her if there were any guest fees, and she said, no, you don't need to pay me anything. On the day itself, everything went well until the reception. To my shock, I was presented with a wedding menu that had prices on it. For example, steak, $50. Everything was ridiculously expensive, including the vegetarian options. At first, I wanted to question her because she lied to me. They didn't have to pay for anything. Dude, it was her wedding day. But it was her wedding, and I didn't want to spoil her day by embarrassing her in front of everyone. Good choice. However, the only other option was to simply not eat, as I didn't bring enough money for both a meal and a ride back, but that was completely unfavorable, so I had skipped my lunch to save space for the wedding meal and was pretty hungry. Suddenly, I remembered that I saw McDonald's about 5 minutes away from the hotel. As tactfully as I could, I asked the bride if I could make a quick stop at McDonald's as I didn't bring enough money for the reception meal. I said I'd be back in time for the gift ceremony and cake. I thought she'd agree, but to my horror, she got really upset. She said she had put so much effort to get this Michelin star restaurant service, yet I still wasn't apt. That I was trying to bring her down by saying that I'd rather eat McDonald's. Bride said it was the woman's fault for not bringing enough money, and she claimed that when she said the women didn't have to pay, she only meant there was no attendance fee. Are there usual cover fees at weddings? What? Furious, the bride told the guests to leave the wedding, and she did, grabbing McDonald's on her way home. Oh, wait, there's more. Back at home, I told my boyfriend everything. He thought it was a funny story. You're right, boyfriend. But said I was an a-hole. If I didn't have the money, I could always pay her back later. And his exact words is, you chose the wrong time to be stingy. My other friends agree as well, saying it was not tactfully of me for doing that at the wedding. And although she lied, I should have just brushed it off instead of dampening her happy spirits. After hearing their opinions, I feel quite guilty and embarrassed. That was fun. And that's your comedy news for today. Follow the show for free on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, wherever you get your shows. You can also subscribe to 5 Good News Stories and all those places as well. See you tomorrow. All right, here's the pitch. 5 stories. They're all good news. It's called 5 Good News Stories. No negative news, just good news. Nice, easy way to start your day. Hopefully you smile. Hi, I'm Johnny Mac, host of 5 Good News Stories. You get the premise? There's 5 stories, and they're all good news. It's the number 5 Good News Stories. 5 Good News Stories. Follow the show wherever you get your podcasts.